choices we make every day, every moment of our lives. How do we actually see this world? And yeah, it's a choice that you make. It's not something that happens to you. You choose it.
False expectations appearing real, false evidence appearing real, failure expected, action required. There are 4 basic categories of fear we encounter in our lives. Realistic fear, like the fear of falling while rappelling. As an avid outdoor adventurer, I know that a lot of mountaineering and canyoneering accidents happen when rappelling. There's fear of the unknown, walking through the woods at a pitch black night, hearing sounds from creatures your brain can't identify, and scenes from the latest slasher movie start playing in your mind. Anxiety, subconscious fear expressed as anxious behavior. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of public speaking. Illogical fear. Clearly you're safe, but you don't believe it. You're on the Tower of Terror drop at the theme park and you're scared you're going to die, even though you know the 100 people in line in front of you went through the drop just fine. One definition of fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or a threat. Do you see a theme here? In nearly all of these descriptions of fear, they originate from the same place, our thinking mind.
Welcome to the most exciting adventure of your life. Welcome to a new way of living, and welcome to the Fierce Planet Adventures podcast. Hi, I'm Casey.
And I'm Andy. And we're a married couple on a mission to inspire and guide 1 million people to live a life of purpose, passion, and self-mastery through the 5 mountains of cutting-edge development.
Today, we're speaking with Ed Hiner. In his 20-year career as a Navy SEAL operator and officer, Lieutenant Commander Ed Hiner saw 9 major deployments, and amongst numerous other awards, earned 2 Bronze Stars with V for Valor and Combat Leadership. While working in one of the most challenging team settings in the world, Ed acquired a diverse skill set that is unparalleled in the workplace today. Ed now uses his extensive background and knowledge to work with companies to manage fear and manufacture motivation within all levels of the organization. Has founded SEALpreneurship, a mental toughness program based on Navy SEAL principles developed to help today's youth, and is LA Times bestselling author of the book First, Fast, Fearless, How to Lead Like a Navy SEAL, and author of new release Guts, Greatness Under Tremendous Stress, a Navy SEAL system for turning fear into accomplishment. Welcome, Ed.
Well, thank you for having me. Here we are.
Very welcome. Really appreciate the time, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So we like to start out by asking our guests, what are you grateful for today?
To be alive, to have a house, have a family, pretty much everything. I think that's gratitude is probably one of the most powerful tools that we have as human beings to live a happy life, is to be grateful for everything that you have. And yeah, I practice gratitude every morning. It's one of my goals, actually. I talk about in Guts is I challenge people to do this when they first become conscious that they're awake. First thing you do, if you can make yourself be grateful, just give yourself 5 minutes. Grateful for the big things, I'm alive and stuff, but the water's running, there's during the pandemic, there's toilet paper, right? But just gratitude and every, creates that state of mind. And I'm very heavy on state of mind, controlling your own state of mind. So I'm grateful for everything. I guess that's a long answer to a short question.
No, that's great. And I think one of the things you touched on there is you didn't say it in so many words, but first thing when you wake up in the morning, we have the ability to choose our first thoughts of the day. So why not make them positive thoughts? Why not be grateful, right? Instead of choosing, angry, negative thoughts.
That's right. And you just said it, choosing. It's a choice. Choices we make every day, every moment of our lives. How do we actually see this world? And yeah, it's a choice that you make. It's not something that happens to you. You choose it.
Absolutely. So 20 years as a Naval Special Warfare officer, 9 major deployments, 2 Bronze Stars with V for Valor, combat leadership. Clearly, you're no stranger to what many people would consider fearful situations. What gap did you identify in our society that inspired you to write your new book, Guts?
Well, Well, there's many gaps. I'll try to. One is our society, and I'm not busting on our society, but we've become very soft, very comfortable. The easy button, if you will. There's a pill for this. There's this. No one. The relationship we have with diversity and adversity has become negative. So I think we can create a different relationship with adversity, pain, struggle, whatever it is, because we become um, so wanting to dissolve that in our life that we don't deal with things when they do come up. So yeah, I think we just need to change our relationship with things that are for struggling, and fearful state of mind, all those things. So,
what is something that you would like people to understand more about fear?
If you've been listening to our podcast or following us on socials, it's probably no surprise to you that I've been dealing with back issues for many years. And I want to take a moment just to tell you about something that I've found that's helped me with my flexibility and durability and mobility. And that's called Kokoro Yoga, somatic warrior training. It's not just yoga. It also includes Tai Chi, Qigong, visualization, meditation, and breathwork practices such as Fit Warrior, Fighting Warrior, which incorporates functional fitness and some martial arts movements. And it's been just a really great way for me to maintain some flexibility and durability as I move through our challenges when we go and do Spartan races and climb mountains. So if this sounds like it's something that could help you out, check it out. The link's in the show notes.
Most of it is, if you know that you're scared, it means the event is not happening, right? So it is. Most fears, there's only two fears most psychologists would say exist. That's fear of falling and fear of loud noises. Everything else we make up. And I call it awfulizing. Humans, especially you saw it during COVID, they started to what I call awfulize, ruminate, if you will. They think of something, the unknown, and they look at the worst case scenario, and then they ruminate on that. And that becomes their reality, when in fact, it's not a reality. It's their mind playing that video over and over. And most people in America, we have a vivid imagination about fear. Like, oh my God, it's going to be terrible. Everybody's going to die. The pandemic's going to kill everyone. And that state of mind is created. It's created by the 24-hour news cycle. It's created by the social media. It's just, and it grows in itself. And fear is not, there's real fears. If you see a lion in the Sahara, that's a fear. But most of the fears that we have in America just aren't real fears. And people just awfulize and ruminate on them.
Exactly, right. We create so many situations in our minds that aren't actually true, and leads that fear stops us from living our best life. I think, from empowering us, from us not taking chances, not going out and being the best people we can be. Now, one of the takeaways from Guts is you state that what we think we fear may not be what we really fear. Is that what you just alluded to, or is that something else?
Well, it can be. Fears are irrational. I teach people how to, set a goal, set plans for those goals and stuff. And one of the things they never really teach you in goal setting or whatever is, what fears do you have? See, in the SEAL teams, before you go on a mission, one of the things you do is you what if it, right? Okay, what if you're walking down a trail and you get shot at? What if it's over in the surf zone? What if? So you what if those fears, what they are is fears. And then you want to put down, I use categories, okay? If you have a fear, whatever that fear is when you're setting goal, right? Public speaking. Most people say, they think they're going to actually die. I'm like, well, you're not going to die. But so you take that, so how do you mitigate the fear that you had? And if you can't mitigate it, what do you do? What's the immediate action drill you do if it actually comes true? If your boss actually fires you, what do you do? So I teach kids, because that's what I specialize in now. It's mostly kids on foster juvenile court system in underserved communities. That's where SEALpreneurship came from. But we teach those kids how to look at those fears and actually, categorize them and label them. And like, you're not going to die on stage, so that's not a real fear. Now, you might feel shame, or you might feel stupid, or you might feel that people think you're an idiot, or whatever the case is. Now we can mitigate those fears. Because, actually we use public speaking. I use it with the kids is because public speaking, I use it as a fear tool. And because public speaking is, if you look at most of the charts, is as high or higher than the fear of dying. So people would rather be in the box than he would be given a eulogy.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's just teach people how to deal with fear, because nobody in society really does. Our kids go to school and they work hard at the classes and all that, but no one teaches them the mindset, that mechanism inside them that they can do anything from. So you build that mindset, and then you can do whatever you want to do. It is transferable across your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say is a good starting point for folks to start recognizing fear, false stories versus reality?
Well, one is write them down. I'm a big believer in writing things down. If it's like a book. People are like, oh, I got this great book in my head. I'm like, well, it's worth nothing that you put on the paper. Even if you put something on the paper that's awful, it's worth more on that paper than it is in your mind. So write these fears down, because we know, as goal setting, if you write something down, you're twice as likely to probably do it. The act of writing is an act of committing and doing those things. So write those fears down and say, go through them and see if they're actually rational, and if they are rational, then what can you do to mitigate it? Because you have to keep mitigating things, like, people financially, or, with the COVID especially, it was, people just sat there and ruminated and awfulized, and they didn't write these things down and try to mitigate their fears and take an actionable plan. Because, taking action reduces fear.
So going back to working with kids, your desire to help today's youth be more successful in life. Thinking about that, I think of someone in my family about that in the teenage years, that I had a recent conversation where I didn't realize how much fear she had on a day-to-day basis. And it was very eye-opening to me, but how do you go about that with someone of that age, trying to open their eyes to this bigger world without so much fear?
As far as youth, what we do, one of the things we do with the youth is we expose them to different things. Expose them to an author, expose them to a multi-millionaire entrepreneur. We expose kids to a lot of different things. Is now that if you want to say a doctor, most kids in these foster youth systems that we have, and underserved, kids of color, they don't think about being a doctor for the most part. It's out of their realm because they've never been exposed to it. So that fear, that gap between the accomplishment, what they want to do, and what they possibly think they can do. And we discuss it through that. And it's like, look, these are just normal people, and they get to meet normal people that are extremely successful. They're not super geniuses necessarily. They're nothing special other than, they work hard, they use their talents, and that's it. It's a process to go by. And kids, once you expose kids to different possibilities, and that the gap between the possibilities starts to shrink. They start to go, well, I can do that. This is possible for me. It's not, it's just a step-by-step process. That's, as you guys know, goal setting is just putting one step in front of the other. That's how you write a book. Well, you write one word at a time. You keep writing until something happens. So.
Exactly. Right. The old adage, trite but true, right? How do you eat an elephant? One slice at a time. Micro goals.
That's right, and that's important to teach kids. They don't know that yet.
Mm-hmm. And then keeping focus on what your goal is, and not being distracted by the next shiny thing to come along. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And distractions such as, we teach kids, and this is an important role too with goal setting for anyone, is we teach kids in the military. We do a lot of planning, and there's there's nauseum. We teach them how to understand, prioritize situations, right? How do you prioritize the things in your life, right? Critical, essential, enhancing. That's how we do it. CE2. So what are the critical things? What are things that, are going to really push you forward? And that's the 20% of the things you do in your life are going to cause 80% of the impact that you have. What are those things? And we get kids to label them. And then at the end of the day, when we do these exercises, they realize the essential, critical, essential, and then the enhancing. The enhancing is, to me, is like taking a shower, a hot shower, right? It's nice to have a hot shower, but a cold shower works. So we teach kids that, like playing on social media and, constantly texting your friends and stuff, does that get you towards your goals? It doesn't. It distracts you. It takes your attention. And that's what social media is. It's an attention theft. That's all it is. So we teach kids how to prioritize on paper. They don't have to commit yet. And then when you look on the paper at what they have to do, this is how you get to your goal. It's not social media. It's not doing all this nonsense. It's actually these critical pieces that you've labeled and then the essential pieces. So yeah, we put it on paper and get them to actually do it themselves, and they can see what the outcome, how to get to the outcome.
Yeah. Success, micro goal success, I think breeds success, right? So it's a loop, a success loop, if you will, where one little win will inspire you or motivate you to move to another win and to keep on going, right? Okay, but what happens when you don't win that next micro goal? What do you teach the kids there when they don't hit that win? Friends, if what we're discussing today, the 5 domains of cutting edge human development, sounds interesting to you and you want to experience it for yourself, a great place to start is the Unbeatable Challenge. You can try it for free now. There's a link in the show notes, and it's a great way to really jumpstart your 5 domain training and become really clear on your goals for this year and how to crush them. We did this challenge earlier this year, and it was a great way to find clarity and redefine our mission, our purpose. And Casey and I also used it as an alignment piece in our marriage to make sure that we were on the same page. So the link is in the show notes. You can try it for free now. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Take action.
Well, failure is part of it, right? Then it's not. It's like an election, right? You don't have to get every vote to win. You just got to get the majority. So of course you're going to have setbacks. Of course, some days you're not going to do what you're supposed to. That doesn't mean anything. That's just one of the votes you didn't get that day. And we call it with kids, because kids love social media and stuff, is we live and lead your life with likes, right? So how to teach each other how to be supportive of each other, how to be supportive of your friend, how to be supportive of your teammates, is to lead with likes, right? You see someone doing something right, let them know that, instead of always reprimanding. So those failures are to be expected, and the kids understand it. Okay, if you got 10 things you need to do and 2 of them you fail, you still got 80%. You're still winning the election.
Absolutely. I think you hit a critical point there too. From what I heard is, tell them what you like, right? The positivity, the positive influence versus the negative influence, or the negative feedback, which, oftentimes is not at all helpful.
No, it's not. We have to correct behaviors. We do that in the SEAL teams. We have after action review process and all those things to correct behaviors. But I think if you model and show and let people know what success looks like, then down the road, as a leader especially, you don't have to constantly tell them. You don't have to constantly be micromanaging, if you will, right? Because they understand what success looks like, because you've modeled it and you've hit that like button enough times. They go, I know what you want.
Yeah. So the right in there is one of the essential points of being a leader versus being just a manager. That's right. When it comes to leadership, right? Awesome.
You manage things, you lead people, right?
Yep. 100%. So, fear, you mentioned fear is a disease, and I'm going to add that it's contagious. Right. The more you allow it to permeate your mind, the more it spreads to other parts of your life. In our society, the disease being spread by our politicians and the media for political gain and for ratings. How do you recommend people cut through the BS, set their fears aside, and take an objective look at a situation to make a courageous decision?
One, turn off the news. Start right there. Okay.
Amen.
Stop saturating your brain, your subconscious, your reticular activating system, all those things. Stop saturating yourself with those thoughts. Because look, when you look at how terrorists or radicalized, is they ruminate or awfulize. They see the same information loop over and over. They don't get outside their information bubble. They become angry. They're isolated. They're by themselves. And, being by yourself is also one of the things we teach people never do. Not never, but, we teach the swim buddy process. But that's how people become radicalized and become, just infected with all this fear that comes with it. And it's not true. You turn one channel from the other, and it's a totally polar opposite view. So you got to understand those people that are pumping that information are just like professional wrestling, right? It's not real. There's a good guy and a bad guy. Each depends on what channel you're on, but they're just making, they're just politicking, and people should stop allowing that to happen to them. Read something from the other side, right? If you consider yourself a super liberal or whatever, go watch Fox News or do something opposite. Shift your perspective just a little bit.
Perspective taking is a very powerful way to be able to engage with folks, right? For those who don't know that are listening to our show here, what's a swim buddy?
Well, a swim buddy is a fundamental principle of how we build teams in the SEAL teams. And we actually use it. A couple of corporations, when I wrote the first book, actually a guy that wrote the book called How to Deliver a TED Talk actually contacted me and said, here's your TED Talk. But a swim buddy. And some corporations I've worked with in the past have actually adopted this. I'm like, look, man, people do things alone, and especially in the corporate world. They get in their cubicle and they have a project or they have something, and they're just like, oh my God, you got to hide from people. They're scared out of their mind. But having a swim buddy, having someone to have that check and balance. I mean, we all know the observation effect and how, the pure act of observing something changes its behavior, right? So having a swim buddy to bounce ideas off of you, that means two people. And that's the foundation of all teams. Is you're smarter, you're braver, you come up with better, you're more asymmetrical in problem solving, and you're also less fearful, right? People ask me, I probably jumped out of a plane, I don't know, 500 times. And people are, you jump out of 30,000 feet, 40 below zero with 200 pounds of equipment at 3:00 in the morning. You're like, why'd you do that? I'm like, well, the guy in front of me did it. Right? My swim buddy went, so did I. And the guy behind me says the same thing, because you're with that person and you rise to that occasion with that person. And it also helps with accountability. I talk with kids about overlapping fields of accountability. When you give a mission to a swim pair in the SEAL teams, you hold them both equally accountable to the failure or success of the mission. But I think people are just too alone, oftentimes.
Yeah, very true. So you had mentioned accountability. One of the things that I guess was really enlightening to me at some point in the last decade along my leadership journey was extreme accountability, right? I'm accountable for not only what I do, but also the outcomes and what my teammates do, what my subordinates might do. And that, I think that's a novel concept to a lot of people. They don't, hey, that ain't my shit, right? That's yours. I would imagine that's part of the swim buddy process too, is you guys own each other's wins as well as failures.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, here's why I explain it. Like I said, overlapping fields of accountability. And I talk to you guys are married couple, so you know this. You should know it. No, being a couple or swim buddy, if you will, is not 50-50. Okay. People think, well, it's 50-50. Well, that leaves gaps in the middle, right? And the way we understand swim buddies and accountability in SEAL teams is two people, it's each one of you owns 100% of the success of the mission, right? Like if you're in a helicopter and there are 8 people in the crew, 2 pilots, whatever, you're 4 crew members, and a crew member sees something in the back and doesn't say anything, everybody dies in that helicopter, right? So if organizations act more like organisms instead of organizations with silos and that's not my job. See, in SEAL teams, we don't do that. You deploy, there is no, that's not my job. Your job is whatever it is that you have to do at the moment to win the mission. So overlapping fields of accountability makes, it keeps from having that seam where the gaps of excuses and come into play, right? I didn't do that. It wasn't my job, right? We hear that all the time.
Yeah, not me.
But in SEAL teams, we give people, it's real simple how you teach students how to be accountable and own. I call it extreme ownership of the outcome. And if you ask a student, did they get something done? There's two responses, yes, no. And then there's one excuse, right? I effed up. Meaning what you're doing with that is you're breaking that excuse away from the outcome. See, right? If you allow these excuses to permeate, they're always going to go to the excuse. They're going to default to an excuse. But if they realize there are no excuses, I don't care if your car broke down, I don't care. Then they start to be more innovative and creative. And that relationship with those excuses starts to distance. They don't automatically default to that excuse. So it's real simple how we do it. We just, hey, did you get it done? Yes, no, and I messed up. That's it.
How did you deal as a married couple with fear? We had listened in other podcasts that you would make plans, have certain scenarios planned out, discuss those what ifs to mitigate fear. But as you write and mentioned, we have excellent imaginations. So how do you plan for the worst without crossing that line of going into rumination or just fear looping?
This episode of Fierce Planet Adventures podcast is brought to you by 5 Mountain Coaching, licensed unbeatable mind coaching, integrated accelerated vertical growth across 5 domains of cutting-edge development designed by retired Navy SEAL Commander Mark Devine. Learn the big 4 skills of mental toughness and resiliency. Discover the 6 pillars of performance. Test your mettle with custom-created crucibles across all 5 domains. Visit 5mountaincoaching.com to schedule your free 1-hour unbeatable mind coaching session. That's the number 5, mountaincoaching.com. Begin your journey to becoming unbeatable today.
Well, you take action, because in combat, I mean, I know one deployment probably alone, I probably did close to 200 missions, right? 6 months. So you're doing sometimes more multiples per day. If you allow that ruminating, that awfulizing to get into your brain, you would not be able to function. Because we know once you start to get fearful, like that executive part of your brain, the most important part of your brain, the part that makes you an executive, it shuts down. And then you start to really make stupid mistakes. So in combat, you identify what's the worst case scenarios, and then you start planning, and you never stop. You never stop planning. You never allow yourself to just sit there and let it happen to you. So, because when you're planning in your mind, that's the same as taking action, because it is taking action, right? If you're planning, rehearsing, preparing, you're actually taking action to mitigate that fear. So, and it keeps you in the moment, in which people understand when you meditate or you learn to focus deeply, you can stay in the moment, keep that awfulizing part of your brain from, doing that thing it does. Because we have that voice in our mind. We all know that voice. And that's why meditation and stuff is very important, is to be able to control that focus and shut that part of your brain off.
Yeah. How much of that do you incorporate into what you do with the youth today? Do you teach them any of that?
We haven't yet, because the kids I'm working with in a juvenile and courts and foster system, they're a little bit young, and we only have, like, for instance, we have 2 weeks of intense training with them, which is a lot of time, but to getting to the meditation, to convince them that it's something they might want to do, is not there yet. But I do have another project. It should be a national project with homemade. It's a national organization that brings kids off the street and helps them find careers. We partnered up with Lennar Construction, and we're going to do a pilot program in October, hopefully unroll it to a national level. They're taking 30 to 18-year-old kids or young people off the street, house them. They're going to put them through construction. Here's how to use tape measures, do some project-based stuff. And I have the first 2 weeks of that month-long course. And we're going to teach them mindset, because they recognize that the mindset of these kids, the young people, if you will, that needs to be changed first, right? Once you establish the right state of mind, the right mindset in your life, doesn't matter what you do. You can become a pilot, you can become a plumber, you can run an ultra marathon, whatever you want to do. You already have that skill set in you, and you can transfer it over across.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great work. Thank you. Motivation versus discipline. Is there a difference?
Well, I would think so. Discipline is something we all need. That's the foundation, right? Delaying gratification, if you will. That's discipline, right? Not sleep until 8 o'clock in the morning, get up at 6, whatever it is. Not playing on social media, but doing your homework. All those things, delaying gratification. That's how we teach discipline. When we teach it, I teach it with language discipline, kind of those, and how to establish those rituals, those patterns, those habits. Because motivation, everybody runs out of motivation. Right? Mm-hmm. There's a limited tank. And that's why I say you got to manufacture motivation, because there's a limited tank of motivation. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Tony Robbins, right? The most motivated dude on earth, that you eventually run out. So you have to manufacture that. And I talk some of that in Guts, is how you use your body, right? You use your chassis, if you will, your body, the physicality, your physical life, and sleeping. You use those things in movement to find that motivation, to manufacture that motivation. Because most people think all these successful people just stay motivated. They really have to manufacture, and they just create a discipline. I get up, I do this pattern, this is this ritual. I think I wrote about that in the book, but I would get up at 4:30 naturally because I'd sleep the time I needed, and just my goal was to get in front of this keyboard. That was it. Not to write a book, not to write, blah, blah, but just to get in front of that keyboard. And that's kind of the discipline we teach kids, is all you got to do sometimes is show up, get there, and then let the rest kind of happen.
Yeah. I think Stephen Pressfield mentions that in his book, The War of Art, is, you just have to be disciplined in getting in front of that keyboard every day and letting it flow. Right. Some days it flows, some days it doesn't.
Yeah.
Very cool. Something else you mentioned there, I think is really important. For me personally, in my 20s, when I was first dipping my toe into this self-improvement world, I had this perception that people like Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy, they just stayed in that perpetual state of positivity and motivation. There was no such thing as fear in their lives. And as I got older, I came to realize that, these people dealt with all the same things that I'm dealing with. They just found different ways or better ways to process the fear or the lack of motivation. And I think that what's really important for folks is the work that you're doing, the work that we're doing with coaching is showing people that there's a different way to process these things, right? Everybody has these issues, but there's tools that you can use. And I think your book is spot on and is a great way for people to lean into that. Is that your experience as well?
Well, I think so. Then we talk about that with the language, right? The way you speak, like Shakespeare said, nothing's neither good or bad. Thinking makes it so. And it's such a true statement. And it is how you process it through language, through visualization, through those mechanisms that you control. They're not out of your control, that you create your own perception of what happened, right? We've been on missions before where we're coming back, every single person had a completely different viewpoint of what actually happened. Mm-hmm. They process it differently. And I can tell you, look, and I've had all of the 9 deployments I've been on, the only time I've had anyone that had I guess you'd call it mental health issue on deployment, I had to send him home, was not a SEAL. He was the person that never went outside the wire, but he was such awfulizing in his mind, and he was doing all those things. He didn't have the process. He didn't have the skill sets that we had, where we can stop with things, start again. Okay, we take a bad situation, got that. Because SEALs, I guess, are optimistic to a fault, right? It's like, hey, you got a 50-50 chance of dying on this mission. Like, man, that's pretty good, right? It depends on how you see that and how you talk to yourself, right? Like Americans were COVID, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not going to get into politics, but during COVID, what was the death rate of young people? 0.002 or something, right? But it became very much worse. People just thought it to be worse. They kept awfulizing and, oh my God, and fearful. And like, not saying it wasn't possibly dangerous, but it wasn't that dangerous. But people got into that and they allowed it to creep in. So, did I hit that right? Did I explain that well?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's spot on. So we've gone through a lot of information pretty quickly here. Is there anything that we've missed that you want our listeners to know about?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of things. I think one of the most important things I found. Well, I will have to slap myself on the back on this one. But my editor said the best, like when I did the Guts book, right? The best chapter possibly ever read in a final book, the final chapter in the book was this one. So I wrote that chapter in one sitting. I know it doesn't sound like much to people, but normally it takes a while to write a chapter. I didn't edit. I didn't do shit. Excuse my language. But I went right through it. I ran through it because I knew where I wanted to end up. I knew from the beginning where I wanted to end up. And that ending up, I think, is very important to people. I know there's a big Simon Sinek push in the world to, quote, find your why, right? Mm-hmm. And I differ from that. I think the why is created in ourselves, in our own lives. Because when I say that is because not many people are going to be Da Vinci, right? Not many people are going to go save the elephants or save the whales or, whatever that is. Your why is in you. It has to be created and cultivated, right? It's like a lawn. You gotta feed it. You gotta water it. And I think that's what people need to hear is what is your why, and you create that. And here's one of the most powerful things we do with the kids at the beginning, we speak of ethos, and at the end we speak of ethos. And at the end, our kids, after all the training and they've heard it all, they've got those seeds in their brain, they create their own ethos. They create their own why. Why are you here? Because for our kids, we've had kids that are, some of the things that happen to them, it's unbelievable, right? It's hard to imagine. But we're like, look, the first 15 years or 17 years of your life are taken from you. The next 70 is yours. And it starts right now. You're not a victim. You've been victimized. That's fine. But you're not a victim. So that why are you alive? And it's always defined. We're redefining it all the time. When I was younger, my why was a little bit different, but now I made myself, and the reason I started the SEALpreneur program is that I've made a promise to myself in combat because I saw a lot of kids suffering and stuff. And I'm like, you know what, that's what I need to do. And when I got back, I started with the business stuff, and I actually went down the road to the kids world because I made a promise, and that is something that fulfills me. And I know that's something I was probably put on this earth to do. So create your own why. Don't be a victim.
Outstanding. Yeah. I want to just take a moment to thank you for the empowering and perspective changing work that you're doing. And, personally, I think it's just majorly important to work with our youth today, right? It's, trite but true, they're our future. And some of the, these kids just don't have, much given to them, much support. So thank you for doing that. Where can folks find out more about your work and your book?
Well, the book, Guts, Greatness Under Tremendous Stress, you can get it anywhere. But you can go on edhiner.com. You can look at that. That's my personal page. And probably this week going live is myphd.me. That's going to be the company. Nice. We're kind of waiting to certain things get in place to launch the website, but that's going to be the education company website, myphd.me. We figured that's a perfect setting because at the end of our classes, with our students, our diplomas, very nice diploma, we actually give them a PhD in me diploma. Nice. To let them know that the most important thing they can have is that PhD in themselves, not a degree on the wall or whatever it is. It's them. If you own yourself and you build your own confidence and motive, you can do anything. And you don't outsource your life to anyone or anything else. So that's myphd.me will be coming this week, going live.
Outstanding.
Fantastic.
All right, Ed, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Right on. Well, thank you very much. Wish you the best.
Thank you.
Oh, likewise. Thank you.
Friends, if you found the Fierce Planet Adventures podcast helpful, please consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice. It helps others find our podcast.
If you screenshot your review and tag us on Instagram, we'll send you a classic Fierce Planet Adventures sticker. For your water bottle, cooler, car, send us a direct message with your mailing address on Instagram, and we'll send you that sticker right out.
Thanks for joining us and live fiercely.